Hey everyone, Cayna here. Today I will be bringing you another one of our BFA Mythic dungeon guides. These guides are supposed to be short, easy for you to understand even if it's your first time in a dungeon and you're completing it on normal or heroic. Before I get into the video, I want to let you know that there's a playlist in the description where you can find all the other guides in this series. Of course, please like the video, subscribe enabling notifications to know when we upload another one, and leave any feedback you might have on the series in the comments below. The boss itself at the start has a lot of RP, and the RP is dangerous as well as it can one-shot you. So what we opt to do is give water walking and run left through the dungeon, avoiding a lot of trash that is annoying to kill, and instead simply clearing one pack before the boss so we have some space to play. The first boss is called the Sand Queen. The boss is quite simple, but you do need to make sure that you play it correctly. The boss's main mechanic is called Sand Trap. This will spawn a couple of traps around the boss room, a couple of players. These traps will spawn some adds. Killing these adds will put up a circle on the boss, so make sure you don't kill him in two staggered off a fashion. What you want to do is be close to everyone, spawn these traps, and then kill the adds right after. Being too far away will simply cause your healer to get some aggro, and it's really annoying to deal with. These traps over time will grow. Standing in these traps will stun you and deal a good amount of damage to yourself, so make sure you avoid them at all costs. The other mechanic the boss has is the winds that you see right now. These winds simply push you around a little bit like an Eye of Ashara. The only annoying part about this is getting knocked into other sand traps, so make sure that you're constantly watching where the sand traps are and that you're always on the move for them. The last mechanic the boss has is called Upheaval. The boss will dive under the ground, target the player, and after a couple of seconds will come back up. This does moderate damage to the player and anyone around them. How we deal with this is simply the guy stands still and everyone else runs away from him, making sure that he doesn't suddenly run into someone. With abilities like Leap, the Demon Hunter Leap or Warrior Heroic Leap, you can try and dodge this using the proper timing. Things like Blink are too fast and require extremely good timing in order to dodge it, and so far we haven't been able to pull it off with an AMS. In general, this boss is quite simple. Simply be close to the boss, spawn the sand traps, don't get knocked into them with winds, and keep moving on. After the first boss you will go into the sewers. These sewers seem like they don't have any adds, but there's 2 packs of parasites on these. These parasites leave a nasty dot on the tank or anyone that's close if the tank is not close enough, and as they kinda come as a surprise, you have to be very careful with these, as with affixes like bolstering and necrotic, this can be a big hindrance to your tank. The next important mob to know about is the Ironhide Tog. We pull these with a couple of crocodiles. The crocodiles themselves aren't too dangerous. However, the Ironhide Tog has one very important cost that you saw right there. This cost needs to be interrupted at all costs, as it will reduce everyone's damage that is in line of sight by 50%. This is a magic debuff, so it can be master spelled. However, you would prefer obviously to simply interrupt this at all costs. When you're done clearing the sewers, you will start running into the upper prison. In the upper prison, there's one very important thing to keep in mind. There's a couple of Horde and Alliance prisoners for each of the sides, and these can be unlocked with keys that you can find. There's 4 total prisoners, and every single prisoner gives you a different buff. The keys can be found all throughout the prison, and in some cases backtracking for them is actually very useful. You can see me here picking up one of them. If you have a rogue in your group, a rogue can simply lockpick these in the gates and you don't even have to look for the keys at all. The different buffs you can get depends on whoever you open. For the Horde, opening the Tauren is going to give you mana regen buff, which is very useful for your healer. It's basically the Red Paladin wisdom buff. The Orcs will give you a 10% agility and strength increase, which obviously is really good for your tank and any agility users that you might use. The Blood Elf will give you an intellect increase, which is really good for your healers and your magical DPS, and the Upnet will give you a stamina buff of 10%, which is really useful for your entire group. The ways how we prioritize this is either we always take the stamina buff, and then depending on the comp that we run, we'll take either one of the other buffs. If we have 2 casters, we will very likely take the Blood Elf over the Orc, simply because it's going to empower 2 casters and our healer as well. These buffs are permanent, they persist through death. Opening these is an extremely good thing to do. Simply while clearing trash, keep an eye out for the keys, as they are in set positions, but so far I have not discovered every single position yet in the instance. The next monsters you need to know about are the Bilge-Rat Sea Speakers. They will cast Watery Dome. This is a very high priority interrupt. It will put a massive absorb shield on multiple enemies within range, which has to be Blood Elfed off, or master spelled. Make sure you interrupt this at all costs, as it's like one of the few interrupts in the instance that is actually a priority. After clearing a lot of thresh without too many mechanics, you'll run very quickly into the second boss, Yes Haldis. Yes himself isn't very difficult of a boss and has very few mechanics to actually deal with. However, not dealing with them properly at higher levels is going to cause you to get killed very quickly. Main mechanic is Crippling Shift. this will put a slow on one of the targets, which will come in nasty with his next mechanic. Flashing daggers is a massive AoE around him, which you have to be line of sighted. If you're slowed, you might not be able to get into the line of sight area, so make sure that you run early. During the fight, the boss will cast Harlan Fear. This has to be interrupted, otherwise it's just the mass AoE fear on your entire group. Simply just rotate and interrupt on this. When the boss reaches 50% HP, he will stun your entire group and start running to the other side, unlocking all cages in between. With a rogue, you can choose to open these cages beforehand to not have these ads spawn during the fight. However, we never felt like it was dangerous enough. The last case the boss will open will be his brother. Bobby has one main mechanic, which he will do a little bit after getting released. He will start channeling one of your allies, permanently stunning in, and get an absorb shield. You have to break this absorb shield in order to interrupt the boss. Not doing this in time will just mean that one of your friends will get hit by flashing daggers, which at higher levels will very likely just one-shot him. Now we have cleared this room, we actually opt to do a very sneaky tactic. Outside of this area, there's gonna be some cannons that you can shoot to clear the trash. What we decide to do is simply speed through the dungeon, pulling everything and sending someone into the cannon. You can see right here that Dr. J goes inside the cannon and starts shooting. These cannons have friendly fire and they do a massive amount of damage. You want to make sure that you do not hit your allies at all costs. Simply stack up the ads, throw some CCs on them like stuns, and have your guy in the cannon shoot them down. Please note that at higher levels with, for example, the infested affix or with bolstering, this becomes a lot more unreliable. The scary part of these is that the marines, they will cast shoot to the person inside the cannon. This does a ridiculous amount of damage, and you want to make sure that this goes interrupted. Riot shields also make sure that these mobs cannot be knocked back, so you want to make sure that you have stuns for the riot shields, as the main way of dealing with these mobs is simply knocking them, interrupting the casts, and making sure that you can keep AoEing them down. Having a DK, for example, for this pool to grip all of them together will make this pool a significant amount easier, and in worst case, be ready with something like pylons or combat resist on one of your allies, in case you feel this, as running back is gonna cost you a lot of time. After clearing the remaining trash with the cannons, we go into the third boss room. Captain Valyri is a very interesting boss and is gonna require you to do some pre-placement, as you can see now do right now. The main mechanic of this boss is that she will constantly keep exploding barrels, occupying her entire room. Basically, our tactic that we've made for this boss is that we try and keep one safety corner, as you can see right now. The bottom left of this corner is where we will be standing the entire fight, and we will try and make sure that this corner is always safe from any of the barrels. Other than this, the boss has ignition. These are the small circles you see right now. These can ignite the barrels, and they will do damage if you stand in them. Cinder Flame is targeted to the barrel, it's a massive frontal, and will explode them. As you can see right now, all the barrels are exploding, but our corner is still safe. Other than this, the boss has Fuse Light, which is just a small dispel on the target. Right now you can see me picking up one of the barrels that was a little bit too close. I'm moving it to a side, place it down far enough away, and as you can see we have very little space left in this corner, but it's enough space to survive. We wait for the explosion to go through, and then simply go back to DPSing the boss. The people that should be doing this is either a healer with some mobility, so for example having a Mistweaver monk would be very good for this. Other than that, your tank should be able to do this with some good movement speed, or have one of the lower DPS with some mobility do it. Having no mobility can cause you to get hit by the Cinder Flame, which does a good amount of damage and you do not want to have happen. After clearing the third boss, we do the same thing again with the cannons. We have now gather up all the mobs. Meanwhile, I will start shooting the first warden real quick, and when all the mobs upstairs are gathered, I will start shooting them. AoEing down all 4 of them, and then we can get a free path to the last boss. Normally you want to make sure that you have some stun or interrupt for these Ashvane priests, as they will cause the massive heal. But other than that, it's extremely easy, just keep shooting down the ramp and clear all of them. Without these cannons, the wardens hit extremely hard on your tank, so it's very unreliable to clear these without a tank. After clearing this trash, you run into the last boss room, which is Overseer Korgus. Overseer Korgus has a very interesting mechanic that doesn't allow you to move around. When you pull the boss, you will see an extra action bar. When this fills up, you will be stunned for 8 seconds if it reaches full. The boss does a lot of knocking around, so making sure that you are standing somewhere in a corner, as you can see with our markers, is very safe. The boss has 4 main mechanics that you have to deal with throughout the fight, and will empower them in different ways. The first mechanic is Explosive Burst. This will target 3 players and simply hit them. This itself isn't too difficult unless it's empowered. Other than this, the boss casts Cross Ignition. Cross Ignition is a lot of different lines. A couple of them are black, a couple of them are white. In the black ones he will shoot, so you have to make sure that you run out of these into the white ones. The boss also casts Deadeye. Deadeye simply targets someone and does a huge amount of damage to them. Getting hit by this will actually increase the damage you take from the next Deadeye you soak by 500%. However, we play with a Brewmaster for this dungeon, and the Brewmaster is able to dodge it, making sure that the stack does not get applied. The last mechanic the boss has is the cannons turning around, as you can see in the bottom left right now. These cannons will simply turn around, and after a while they will shoot. Getting hit by a cannon is basically a one-shot, so you have to make sure that you keep an eye out for those. During the fight, the boss will cast Azeroth rounds. Azeroth rounds do 2 different things. Getting Azeroth rounds in this area will make sure that all the explosives that he does leave an extra nasty dot, basically meaning that it increases the HPS requirements you need to do on this boss. The other Azeroth rounds is Blast. Blast will basically be the most difficult one for you to deal with, as it will start knocking you around getting hit by any mechanic. This is for the explosive rounds and for the Deadeye. As you can see right now, if you pay good attention, you can see your tank get heavily knocked back, and the only reason that he doesn't get stunned is because of his Transcendence placement. This is the main reason that we assign these spots, as you can see with the markers. This way people have a corner to stand in when they get dealt with a mechanic. Other than that, the boss is pretty simple to deal with. Stand in the corners, don't get hit by cross ignition, and make sure that you just don't move around too much. Well, that rounds off this guide. Again, I'm Cayna. You can find all my socials in the description below, including the Twitch, where you're welcome to stop by when I'm live and ask questions you may have there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching and have a great day.